Well, hello, everyone. It's time for, well, it says midday prayer. That's wrong. It's time for Just a Thought. I was just trying to get on. It took, oh my gosh, the troubles we're having today. Um, but anyway, I'm Durrell Watkins, the senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral, and this is Just a Thought coming to you at 12:34 sharp as advertised. With me today and every Saturday that we can get online is the Reverend Cindy Lippert, the co-founder of Sage Coaching and Counseling. And that's sagecoachingandcounseling.com. Sagecoachingandcounseling.com. I'm going to, just a minute here. Let me see if I can fix myself. Look at me being all proper and correct now, the right show and everything. Okay, so so this is Just a Thought, where Maureen Stapleton and I take a where the Reverend Cindy Lippert and I discuss a thought, and today's thought comes from what's his face, Barker. Why don't I have it?
Raymond Charles.
Raymond Charles Barker, but why don't I have it handy? I thought I did, but I will momentarily. All right. See, the secret to success, especially in streaming broadcasting, is preparation. Be prepared. That's all I'm saying. Full object lesson here. Anyway, our thought comes from Raymond Charles Barker, who, by the way, is kind of exciting for me, kind of fascinating, because he is one of the few people actually born into New Thought. And I don't mean my generation or younger. I mean, he was born into New Thought when New Thought was still pretty new, although New Thought is not new. It's been around forever. As long as there's been ideas, there have been ideas that fit into the New Thought philosophy. But Raymond Charles Barker's parents were Presbyterian, but they found the Unity movement, and they were attending a Unity church when he was born, and so he grew up in Unity. In fact, he became a Unity minister. I believe he was ordained in the 40s, but he found religious science. He discovered as an adult religious science. In fact, he met Ernest Holmes and was just so taken with him. Now, there's two stories about Barker. One is sort of apocryphal, is that he was at Unity Village, and Charles Fillmore, who personally ordained him, by the way, that Charles Fillmore had some sort of mystical experience and was seeing some sort of vision and relating it, saying, Jesus in a cloud hovering over the village or whatever. And that was too much for Barker. He was like, no, I don't think so. And so he left to join religious science. That's apocryphal. I can't verify that. That's just one of those stories that float around. But the official story is that he met Ernest, was impressed with Ernest. Ernest became a mentor to him, and actually asked him to start a religious science church, which he did. In fact, I believe he was the founder of First Religious Science in New York City, which is still active today. And when he was still, he retired, and then he moved to California and spent the rest of his years there. I believe it was like 91 when he died. Maybe not that old, but he lived a while, a good while. But he, my earbud just fell out. My earring just fell out. He was a teacher of Louise Hay. Louise Hay, when she went through the ministry training program at the Church of Religious Science in New York, he was the minister there. So, though I mislaid his quote for a minute, Raymond Charles Barker is a fascinating person to me. He was born into New Thought, raised in New Thought, ordained both in Unity and religious science, and ordained by Charles Fillmore, and personally mentored by Ernest Holmes. So I just think he's fascinating. Did you know all of those things, Cindy Lippert?
No, Durrell, I didn't.
Did you really not?
Not all of them. No.
Okay.
Not everything. No.
Did you hear the story about the vision, and that was just too much for him?
No.
I believe I heard someone tell it at an INTA Congress.
You probably did. You probably did.
So, well, in any case, so that's where our thought comes from today is Raymond Charles Barker, and he says, and he's a cradle new thoughter. He says, new thought is an approach to spiritual ideas. It does not tell us what to do; it tells us who we are. And we, by perceiving our own spiritual nature, automatically begin to change our attitude. New thought is an approach to spiritual ideas. It does not tell us what to do, it tells us who we are. And we, by perceiving our own spiritual nature, automatically begin to change our attitude. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that just perfect? It's why we at Sunshine Cathedral say over and over and over, you are God's miracle and not God's mistake. We want you to know who you are. Once you know that, you'll work out everything else.
We know so much about who we are based upon what we did as children, what enlivened us, what excited us, what we were drawn to. We get away from that, something happens in adulthood, and suddenly we're distracted from the very thing. You know, I collected rocks when I was a kid. That's what I do now. You know, all these years later, same thing. My grandparents had a farm in Southern Illinois. This was coal mining country. And the off product of coal apparently is fluorite. Well, fluorite is a crystal that looks much like amethyst. So as a little child, I would run around their circle driveway full of gravel and full of fluorite, which of course is now available. You can buy it online from China for $35 for a tiny rock. Why didn't I keep those rocks? You know, and here I was playing with this probably nuclear waste material. It explains a lot now, you know.
Well, everyone says you have a glow about you, so
yeah, I do.
Now we know why.
It's nuclear. It's nuclear. But you know, I was thinking about what you were saying about knowing who you are, and people talk about finding themselves. It's not a new identity; it's the original identity. You know, when we go back to the essence of who we truly are, we give ourselves permission to do whatever we want to do. Something else comes to mind, and that is that in the process of becoming, we have to trust the process. Walter Starkey, who was a Tony Award-winning playwright, also a great metaphysician that studied with Joel Goldsmith. Walter said one time at a conference I attended that he thought he was probably going to start a new religion called Trust the Process, TTP, Trust the Process. Now, you make nasty comments about my hair, so do my dearest friends, because I'm letting Maureen Stapleton. I rest my case. Anyway.
I loved Maureen Stapleton.
There you go. Who knew? I just forgot my drag makeup this morning. That would have done it. But, you know, in the process of deciding to grow out my pixie, it's a nasty process. You're in between. You're not here, you're not there. So I'm growing out my hair. That's a process. I'm dieting. That's a process. We're building a house, living in 600 square feet. Meanwhile, that's a complete process. And we completely dismantled our lives in Arizona for a greater vision of our lives, for a different vision, one that suited where we are now as a couple and as individuals. Literally everything we own is in storage in Phoenix. And we're sitting in a tiny apartment. To the casual onlooker, I might look like somebody who needed to get to to Weight Watchers and to a hair salon living in a tiny apartment. And that's all the future I had. We cannot trust what a person is going through on the exterior to know the process of becoming that's happening inside.
Mhm. And it's there's two things about judgment that are coming to mind right now. One is you can't judge. First of all, like your lifelong dream could have been to live in a small apartment. Nobody knows. Like this could be manifesting a dream for you.
It
Now,
might.
I mean, you're telling you. I mean, some people like small spaces. Some people like to simplify and keep life very simple. Uh, um, I remember someone once said, who was that? Some English wise person, but said that he lived in a very small apartment in New York. I think it was 2 rooms, and he said that was fine with him because he never knew what to do with a room he wasn't in anyway. He's like, I can only ever be in one room. I never know what to do the other ones anyway. So, like, he had just a bedroom and a kitchen and a little bathroom, and that was his whole world. He's like, well, I'm only in every one of them at a time anyway. So,
Well,
and his
that's
dream was to live in New York.
Yeah, that's good for one person. We got 2 here. Yeah.
Yeah, so you need at least 2 spaces. But he was I think he was in his 70s when it's Quentin Crisp is who it was. I now remember who it was.
Right.
It was Quentin Crisp. His dream was to live in New York. So in his 70s, he moved from England to New York. So his dream wasn't to live in a big house. His dream was to live in the big city. And this tiny apartment is how his dream came true. So you can never judge by appearances anyway. His dream was to live in New York, and he was living his dream. And that tiny space he had was how his dream came true. So you never, ever know anyway. Now, maybe my dream is to live, in Buckingham Palace, but that's my dream. I can't judge anybody else's reality by my dream. And my dream could change. I could get sick of Buckingham Palace and want to move from London to New York and live in a tiny apartment so I could call myself living in New York. You just don't know what someone's dream is, and what part of their experience is a key component of their dream. So now there's that. And that's pretty easy to sell. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge, you don't know what's going on with someone else. That is harder to sell for me when it comes to self-judgment. Why aren't I exactly where I want to be right now? Surely people think I'm a loser because XYZ, or they pity me, or they think, oh, my best days are behind me, or, blah, blah, whatever. Oh, here he's, on a diet again. Why can't this poor loser just, keep it off, or, whatever? Or why can't he really be a loser? Why is he always a gainer? Or whatever the thing is. So I can look at someone else and say, like, I would just never assume that you were in a difficult place, no matter what, 600 feet or 6,000 square feet. I mean, I just would be like, oh, that's Cindy doing her thing. But with me, I'm much less gracious about my process and where I happen to be in any given moment. And in fact, hindsight is 2020. Often I'm in a moment thinking, when am I going to get it? And I look back to the time when I was thinking, when am I going to get it? And realize, oh, wow, I had it. That was a great moment. I was doing really well.
Did you ever look at old pictures and say, I look pretty good there? I thought that was a bad picture.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, I will 3 years ago, whenever that is, 3 years ago from whenever the moment is, behind 3 years past, I was always stunning. And yet, if you had asked me at that moment, I was always heinous. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's always, so yeah. So it's pretty easy to say, oh, look at heroic Quentin Crisp doing his thing, into his 80s, living his dream and blah, blah, blah. That was, and me, if I were in 2 rooms, alone in a city, I'd be like, oh, what's become of me? Unless, of course, so we've got to learn not to judge ourselves also. To remember I am God's miracle and not God's mistake, to remember who I am. And we all make choices. No one gets to do everything all at once. And so in my gratitude prayers, the 2 things I almost always express gratitude for is my education and my travel experiences. I'm a very well-traveled person, and not so much this year because the world shut down, but I assume when the world gets back to being something close to normal, I'm going to be back on planes and boats and trains and seeing more of this world. Um, well, you don't get to travel all over the world and rack up a lot of degrees, and do all these things and live in a mansion and, have $1 billion in the 401k and, have a chauffeur. I mean, you've got to make choices. And I don't care anything about a lot of those things anyway. So I wanted an education. I wanted to travel, and I've done those things. I wanted to live in New York. I did that. I wanted a doctorate by the time I was 40. I was 43, but I got 2 masters in the meantime. So I took a detour, which I'm glad I did. I wanted to live in Florida by the time I was 40. I moved here when I was 39. Those are the things that I really wanted, and those things, because in those moments I remembered who I was and what I deserved, I made them happen. I don't have a mansion, and if you put me on a lie detector test, I don't want one. I live in a cute little cottage, a cute little bungalow in Florida, and as with all home ownership, there is always work to be done on it. We're always doing something, but we love our house. Our house is very comfortable for us, and we could have twice the house and fewer experiences. And Robert and I both love to travel. We love education. And so you just never know what one experience is part of a larger dream. And that's, again, easy to sell. Don't judge a book by its cover. But that includes the book that we are too. That's what we sometimes forget.
I think a satisfied life is based on knowing yourself, knowing what pleases you. I mentioned we're building a house. We're building a very small house. It's not a big house. We downsized years ago after we got into acting, because suddenly having horse property and a house with a guest wing and all of that was not important anymore. Like you said, did that, glad we did it, but it's not who I am, and it's not what I need now. Today, we need a work and live space that serves us for what excites both of us, which happens to be, how can I help serve my fellow human? And meanwhile, the wonderful passion of getting to express different characters in the film and television industry. So it's knowing yourself and then building your life based on what pleases you, not what others expect of you.
And you have like, the thing about being a dreamer is that you always are dreaming new dreams. And so you didn't even decide you might want to be an actor until you were already 99 years old.
Right.
And you just went for it.
Right.
And in fact, we're building a house near the studio.
Across the street.
So
from Netflix. Across the street from Netflix. It takes 1 minute from the lot to get to the front gate of Netflix.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you like to live in Windsor Castle, but have to drive 45 minutes to get to the studio? Or would you like to live in your brand new, you designed it yourself home, and walk across the street to the studio? I mean, what's your dream?
Exactly. So, again, what his quote was this morning rings so true. It's vital for us to get in touch with, am I living the life, my one beautiful life, in a way that is satisfying? And if not, why? And what adjustments do I have to make to get there? What would enliven me? What would give me passion? What excites me is teaching and helping and mentoring and being an influencer for somebody to find their satisfaction in life. I don't have to know what that is or agree what that is. It doesn't matter to me, but it's very satisfying to help somebody on their way.
So if I were like in the middle of some sort of midlife crisis, I'm unsatisfied with the current situation. I'm not clear about what a better situation would be. Would someone at Sage Coaching and Counseling would that be an appropriate resource for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's a lot of sadness going on right now. People are faced with being alone without human contact if they live alone. And also they've been confined with their families or with their spouses. And when we expose ourselves to confinement, what happens is we also expose certain areas of our relationships with each other. There's a lot of grief going on. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of feeling that I'm not needed. And people need to be reminded that they're needed. We need each other.
So I guess we'll wrap this up the way we started it, with Raymond Charles Barker's thought about New Thought, which is the philosophy that we largely adhere to at Sunshine Cathedral and in Cindy's life and in my life. And Cindy's the former president of the International New Thought Alliance. She is a former pastor of Divine Science and Unity Churches. So she is, we are New Thoughters. And the idea that our thoughts influence, our thoughts sort of create our feelings. Our habitual thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings influence how we experience life, how we interpret life, how we show up for life, even influence a lot of what happens in life, and certainly influences what we do with what happens in life. And then, of course, the spiritual dimension of it is that we're all connected. We're all part of a common reality. There's one source. There's one substance. We call it God. And so that this life philosophy of oneness with our source, oneness with one another, and because of that oneness, the power of our habitual thoughts and the feelings that they generate. If we're not careful, we'll try to use it to just be one more thing that fixes things. Oh, I'm going to think this thought or say this affirmation or do this treatment, and I'm just going to make things work. And then a lot of people get frustrated with that, and that doesn't flow. That you can't really relax with that. But Barker gives us the fix for that. That what we're really doing, we're not really trying to fix so much as remember who we are. And when we get that, then our attitudes naturally adjust and things start to flow better. So I love his take on that. So do you have anything else to add to that before we end with the exact quote again, Cindy?
I got into New Thought because it was so freeing. And the key to life, in my view, is finding your freedom. Find your freedom.
Well, he says that, and more words. You put it eloquently and succinctly. He goes on a bit. He says, New Thought is an approach to spiritual ideas. It does not tell us what to do. It tells us who we are. And we, by perceiving our own spiritual nature, automatically begin to change our attitude. It's just a thought, but I think it's a good one. Let's do this again next week, Cindy Lippert.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Thanks, everyone. God bless you.